Okay, yeah, and we are live. Welcome everyone to Healing Beauty Symposium. I am your host, Kelly Morgan, and we're here today with Dr. John Demartini. Hello, John.
Hello, hello. Good morning.
So welcome everyone. Before we get started, I just want to introduce John. He's going to be talking to us about the God and Goddess within. Loving the God and Goddess within, actually, and realizing that nothing is missing. For those that don't know John, I'm going to ask you why not. He is a world-renowned specialist in human behavior, a researcher, an author, and a global educator. And he's the founder of the Demartini Institute, which has over 72 courses on self-development, life mastery, and leadership. His knowledge is the accumulation of 48 years of cross-disciplinary research. As an educator, he travels around the world full-time, addressing both public and professional audiences in seminars, and he teaches on all sorts of subjects. And I really invite you to go and dive into his curriculum. I've done a few of his courses, and I'm always eager to learn more from John. He has synthesized 30,000 books across different academic disciplines, and he synthesized that wisdom for us, the wisdom of the ages, which he shares all around the world. He's also the author of 40 self-development books, including the bestseller The Breakthrough Experience and the global release of The Values Factor. He's also been featured on film documentaries such as The Secret, Oh My God, and The Opus. So welcome, John, to Healing Beauty Symposium.
Thank you for having me.
So we are going to be talking about loving the God and Goddess within, and I really feel that this needs a bit of a setting of the scene, because we've heard from about 7 other speakers so far, and I really wondered if you could share about the fact, this universal law that nothing is missing. Can you explain some of the principles around that?
Okay, I just zoned out for a second. I think we're back.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, John is on a ship sailing around the Atlantic right now. So I was asking about the universal principle, this law that nothing is missing. Before we get into the subject, I wondered if you could explain a bit about that.
Yeah, I maybe I can share a story. When I was very young, 14 years old, I hitchhiked from Houston, Texas to California. And when I finally arrived in California after a few days, I ended up meeting this woman who took me in. I was a street kid at the time. I was living on the streets, but I hitchhiked to California to where I wanted to live. And I met this woman who took me in, who played the role partly of a mother, but also played a role of like a sister. And then I met this other girl that played a role of a girlfriend. And so the form in which my mother, sister, and girlfriend morphed from when I was in Houston to now when I was in California. And when I left them, I ended up working at a Jack surf shop where the man represented a father that owned it. The woman that worked there represented a mother, and the girls on the beach became the girlfriends. And I watched these things morph and change through my time while I was there in California and down into Mexico. And I noticed that everything was provided, it was just in another form. So at age 14, I started to be aware of that. And so I now have worked with, I don't know, tens, hundreds of thousands of people with the question, whatever you think is missing in your life, what form is it in? And so I find that sometimes various women or men in relationships, if I write down everything that they're looking for in a relationship, you know, all the traits that they're looking for and the traits they don't want, and ask who's providing that, they will discover that it's dispersed in many people, or it's concentrated in one. If it's concentrated in one, they have more associated pain with many and less pain with one, and so they concentrate in one. But if they've been wounded by a relationship, they'll disperse it out into many. So I call it the law of the one to many. And everything that you're looking for in the quote soulmate is manifested in one or many people throughout your life. And the same thing in your family. Your family is never missing, it's just changing form. And so asking the question, what do I perceive to be missing? And who is providing that is very valuable. I developed a grief process that people that perceive that they've lost something, and it holds them accountable to ask, what specific trait are you actually missing? Who is now providing it, one or many, male or female, close or distant, virtual or real, self or other? What's the benefit of the new people doing it? What would be the drawback if the other one continued it? And neutralize it out. And all of a sudden they realize they're really resilient and adaptable and changeable, instead of holding on to the idea that I have a missing something. Because otherwise they become victims of history instead of masters of destiny. People who are resilient and adaptable are masters. People that get caught and attached to forms become non-resilient, and they go through the perception of gain and loss. I always say the master lives in a world of transformation. The masses live in the illusion of gain and loss. So asking quality questions to make you aware of what you think is missing, but it's in another form, one or many, male or female. And you'll see that you're more resilient and adaptable. Stress is the inability to adapt to a changing environment. This is a way of living in a eustress, not a distress, by asking what form is it in and finding the form. And I have yet to have anybody that I can't help them see that form. So I know it's solid, this principle, if you just take the time to do it. But we want to hold on to the idea that, no, this person is different. But if you break it down and deconstruct it, you can find all the parts. And so there's nothing missing. The Bonpo Lama, when I was in Nepal, meeting with the Bonpo Lama there, we had a discussion about the idea that nothing's missing. And it was fantastic. And he was fully aware of this. He says, nothing missing, nothing missing, all present. Our awareness is unconscious of the forms in our fields of existence. And I think that it's wise to know how to ask the quality question to awaken the realization nothing missing, because it empowers our life. And we're not dependent on some form. We're freed to realize that we're adaptable to change.
Thank you. Thank you. So this symposium has been a lot about the feminine, and there's been talk about the goddesses coming back, and I've heard you speak about that. But I would love you to share some of the ancient histories in regard to there was always a god and a goddess, like the two forms. Can you share some of that, an insight, a glimpse into that?
Okay, you ready to go for that? Well, theology in ancient times was a personification of astronomy and optics. And so the heavenly bodies, there were stages of theological development. There was what they called geomorphic stage, and there was a zoomorphic stage, and then there was a zoomorphic plant and animal stage, and there was an anthropomorphic stage, and then an astromorphic stage. And the astromorphic stage was the study of astronomy, and they considered the light and the dark, the day and the night, the sun and the moon, and they personified it. Because at night, water would fall down to the earth, and during the day, water would rise up into the sun, into the light. And so there was a falling and rising mechanism and a cycle of day and night, and these things were personified as parts of nature. The light itself is the optics, and the heavenly bodies that reflect the light or give off the light were considered the gods and goddesses. So the sun of Egypt, for instance, was the sun. It's the Osiris and Ra. And so, and they even had the white waters of the Milky Way. They understood the Milky Way, even in times of Pythagoras and the Greeks. And so they personified Kepara as the center of the Milky Way. And they had Amun-Ra as the light from the Milky Way to our solar system, our sun. And then they had Ra, and then they had Osiris-Ra, and then they had Horus, and then they had the Pharaoh. And they personified this emanation of light from the center of the galaxy to the sun, and from the sun to the earth, and they personified it. And the sunset and the sunrise were personified as feminine and masculine sides to this intelligence, because they believed that this light was intelligent. So this personification, masculine and anthropomorphism that was attached to the nature, the elements of nature, of the heavenly bodies and the light itself, was where this idea that God and Goddess came from. It's a personification, a projection of our own nature onto the elements of nature. And so we relate to this because during the day we oxidize with our parasympathetic nervous system, and we have support. And we have our sympathetic nervous system, and we have oxidation. And at night we rest and go into darkness. And we have parasympathetic, and that activates the estrogen for the night that supports and builds the white blood cells. I mean, if we look, there's a personification of these day and night cycles going into our physiology. And so the cycles of nature and our suprachiasmatic nucleus in front of our brain, it actually is involved in the circadian rhythms. The circadian rhythms are expressing these physiological responses. And so they show up, again, personified in our own estrogen and testosterone, our passive and our active components of our physiology. So there's a relationship between the heavenly bodies, the optics, the day and night, the physiology, circadian rhythms, and our behavior. So I think the God and Goddess is alive in us from the astronomical all the way down to the physiological. So that I could take it at any different stage, down to the subatomics all the way to the astronomics. We can see this masculine and feminine nature and forces of nature working, and to bring them into equilibrium was the mastery. You know, the idea that one should dominate over the other is only an amygdala response. Our amygdala, which is a more primitive surviving mechanism, forced us to try to get rid of the dark and see the light. And so that skewed the feminine side and, exaggerated the masculine side. But the truth is you need to have both. You can't have a rising God without a formation of the mortal. You can't have the rising of the immortal without the mortal. In Corinthians, it says, first there's a natural body, then there's a spiritual body. There's a descent and an ascent, and you need both. And the integration of those was the awakening of the androgyny, the animus and anima together, and the sun and moon together. Even the wedding ceremonies that you see in Christianity, for instance, is actually representing the moon and the sun. The asterisms of the moon going through a cycle around, when it goes to new moon, it's facing the sun, and it's Isis meeting with Osiris. And when it goes around to the other side, she's now the fertility goddess. And if you look at the personifications of the stories of Egypt and all the Greek mythologies, you'll see that it's just the movement of the sun and the moon personified into the masculine and feminine aspects of nature, all the way down into our physiology, affecting our estrogen and testosterone levels and physiology and parasympathetic, sympathetic. And so we're part of that God and Goddess, that intelligence of the universe, that pan-psychic presence in the universe in our daily life. There's really never been a loss of the goddess or a loss of the God if you personify it from astronomy, but in our awareness and our theologies and our institutions, the misinterpretation from the amygdala has made us suppress some of those things temporarily.
Yeah. So then in terms of our perception, like our amygdala perception that the goddess has been missing, can you help us with your method find some pointers about where she has been? Because like you said, that she can't be missing. So can you give us some pointers about where she's been then?
Well, she's been, today in the developing countries, the masculine and feminine are becoming quite androgyny. Women are running businesses and making money and doing the things that were traditionally the providing side. And men are taking cooking at home and doing things like that. So the traditional roles have become murky, and now it's all open. But in underdeveloping countries, you still have a gender bias and gender split, and you still have these polarities. And during those times, they were projected onto the gods and goddesses during that period. So if we have a very humanistic, anthropomorphic religious, whatever we're doing down here gets projected back out there. And if there's a suppression of the female here, but reality, the female has never lost power in the procreative process. I mean, she may not have run businesses, but she certainly ran families, and she still was the matriarch of society. And any man, if he knows anything at all, if he's smart at all, he's going to know that nothing gets done without the female. A man eventually has to learn how to just say, you're correct. I can't believe I'm so stupid. And so that's part of the male awakening. But the reality is the female may not been influencing some of the decision makings in the political world. But without children and without the procreative process, there is no human beings. There are no things. So that has may not been honored, but that's an absolute honorable thing. I had a lady in the program in London who said, my life, I need a purpose. And I said, well, what are you doing every day? She says, I'm raising family. I said, well, that is a purpose. Rose Kennedy said, I dedicate my life to raising a family of world leaders. So the individual that's sitting and raising family, that's the very foundation of society itself. So that's not a lost goddess. That's a concentrated goddess on making sure that we have life on the planet and procreation on the planet and education on the planet. I don't think there's really been a complete suppression of that in total. I think that that's just not honoring the form in which that's been expressed during that time. And I think it's been there the whole time. I just don't think it's been honored by the political business model approach. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many men come alive without a female.
Yeah.
You can't have one without the other. So the whole idea that there's and historically there's a balance of those procreated on the planet. So I don't know. The whole idea that there's one should dominate doesn't make any sense to me. It's never. So I would say that what's the form it's in? It's in the form that it's been temporarily put into the family and to social and to physical beauty and things of that nature. And now it's being widespread into all areas: spiritual, mental, career, financial, family, social, and physical. And there's some countries through history where the males were more passive and the females ran the show. I've seen that in Peru. I've seen women that run the system in Peru, and the males are passive. They work in the fields, and the women make all decisions and do all the business stuff. So it depends on the culture. And I think that we've been tainted by, Judeo-Christian period to some degree. But even Asherah was in and was there with Yahweh. Asherah was the goddess with Yahweh. They were balanced. And then Christianity had the Madonna and had the Mary Magdalene, even though it was suppressed to some degree in some of the writings, but you can read those in the Gnostic writings. You can see that there's a goddess there. I don't know if Jesus would have done so well. There's one story of the Gospel of Mary where, all the other disciples are supposedly saying, why are you hanging out with Mary all the time and not us? He was smart enough to know he better get some information to get intuitive feedback from the female if he's going to do anything in his life. I'm having some fun here, but we don't know how much of that is true or not. But the idea that the goddess is alive and well, I think that it's wise to honor all the forms that she's been playing in, and temporarily she was procreating and putting energies there, and running, helping societies and building communities and things. So I don't think that that's any less than running a business. I think that's, if you don't have women, you don't have employees for a business. So one's not better than the other. You need both. But today women are full spectrum and men are full spectrum. And now I know some women that I dated a girl that opened up a nuclear power plant, borrowed billions of dollars to do that, and then ran 3 train manufacturing companies, and would make any CEO of any company, castrated because of her empowerment. So I don't think that there's any lack of that in the female, because some women just take off and just empower themselves. So I don't want to promote the idea that the female's been a victim of history so much as where is it, and honor the form that it's in, honor that power, and now it's changing form. It's not a better form. Because the fertility rate goes down when we start to having females that go into the business side, the fertility rate drops. So that's not a better, it's just, so the goddess is there, it's essential, it's transforming, and all the forms are honorable, the way I look at it. They're all honorable.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on such a point there. It's not that it was missing, it's that it was honorable, and perhaps it wasn't honored by this recent, last 2,000 years. But I love what you said there, that it's actually in the text. If we go and look, she's very much there in different forms.
Yeah, but what happened is there was reasons, because water and earth were symbolized, since Empedocles put the elements together, the ancient Greek, in about the 5th century, he put the elements together, and here's the fire and air that goes with the male, and the water and earth that went with the female. That's the traditional thing. And so one was falling into mortality and the other one was rising out of immortality. So the amygdala's view of that is one is good and one's bad, one's light and dark and one's better and worse. And that skewed the interpretation. That's not the real teachings. that's a misunderstanding of the amygdala's thinking in the lower banal areas of the brain that's trying to avoid dark and seek light instead of honoring light and dark. You need both sides, and to realize that inside the dark is light and inside the light is dark. there's a Taoist insight there. So I'm a firm believer that skewed view temporarily took the males that had power and didn't honor it. But behind the scenes, I don't know of any male that didn't have, I mean, even during the Catholicism, behind the scenes, if you go study really carefully, there's all kinds of concubines and females and all kinds of stuff going on behind the scenes, running and being equal, and they were just not being honored in the literature. But I think it was Walter's, Barbara Walker, I think it was.
Barbara Walker,
that wrote
yeah.
Barbara Walker. She did some fantastic work on bringing out the history of some of the goddess stories that had not been noticed and honored and appreciated. She did a great job. And I thought that was well done. And so you see, there's a lot of astrological and astronomical and also mythological and legends there that had the female all through it. But that, just like in almost every field, you only get whoever has power gets to make the history. The rest of it gets kind of pushed aside. And that's not just male to female, that's also males to males. Males shut down other males. Sir Isaac Newton, when he wrote Principia, well, when Principia was created by Sir Isaac Newton, he suppressed Barrow and a bunch of other astronomers and kind of cut them out of his writings, and they got squashed. So whoever had power, they got squashed too. And I don't think that's it's just whoever has power. Any area of your life you don't empower, people are going to overpower you. If you don't empower yourself intellectually, you're going to be told what to think. If you don't empower yourself in business, you're going to be told what to do. If you don't empower yourself in finance, you're going to be told what you're worth. If you don't empower yourself in relationships, you're going to be doing honeydew things around and doing something you could be delegating. If you don't empower yourself socially, you're told propaganda and misinformation like we see today. If we don't empower us physically, we'll be told what drugs to take and organs to remove. If we don't empower ourselves spiritually, we'll be probably taught some of this dogma, polarized, antiquated dogma, when in fact you need both sides, male and female, or masculine and feminine, or really we don't even want to put those polarities on it. Let's just take them completely out and just put in there the divine nature and the androgyny nature of the universe, and just to get, take the terms out and not put it one side or the other, but honor it as it is. Because in ancient Egypt, they had the Osiris and Isis were pretty honored equally. And they had Tum, which is the masculine and feminine woven together. And they had the male and female all the way through the systems in Egypt. And Sumeria even had this. So it was just a temporary misinterpretation by a patriarchal dominant system, but secretly behind the scenes, the female certainly was not there.
Yeah.
I can show you lots of stuff to show how the popes had the females, and these priests became feminine in order to be the priest. In order to do it, they had to be, they had to play the role of the female in order to do it. So they can't get rid of the female. It's been hiding in some of the males in their femininity.
Oh, thank you, John. I'm sure this is really opening people up, opening up people's insight. So how can we empower ourselves more in, let's say, divine nature, in masculine and in feminine? Do you feel like we're all going towards androgyny? Well, the development is that, every individual, all of chemistry, all of physiology, all of our entire psychology, all of our hormone systems are all striving for authenticity and androgyny. All of our families do that. Our families are made of pairs of opposites, complementary opposites, the summation of all the value systems, and they're always counterbalanced. That's why we have antiparticle brothers and sisters. And males and females are whatever, husbands and wives, what do you want to call them, or just partners, better said, spouses. They're disowned parts merging together to make a whole. And that whole is an androgynous system. And the divine nature, the Gnostics honored the divine as an androgynous state and not a polarity state. So I think as we develop our theology, it integrates the masculine and feminine into something that transcends the labels. I think that's the real nature. I don't think that the divine nature has a side to it, really. I think it has a synthesis. I always say that real love, true divine love, is a synthesis and synchronicity of all complementary opposites, whatever you've defined as male and female or polarities
They're always there, and they're entangled, like quantum physics says. They're entangled. They can't be separated. It's our lower animal surviving amygdala-based mind, our systems one thinking, that separates inseparables, divides the indivisibles, labels the unlabellables, names the inevitables, and polarizes the unpolarizables, and misses out on the magnificence of the synthesis and synchronicity of all pairs of opposites, which is the divine nature of love that permeates the universe, that we can participate in our own nature, regardless of our form.
So how can we start to access this state then? Actually see, I guess, see this divine nature, see this true love state you're talking about?
I missed the question again. It
just went out.
Probably for that. My thing froze again.
Yeah, I was just asking what can we do to start to access and see this love state, see this wholeness? I think we're just freezing a little bit, so we'll just wait to come back. I'm sure.
There we go. Pardon me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I haven't had any freezing for months. I don't know what's happening today.
It's the question. It's the question.
Yes.
I know it's the question. I've asked, how can we start to see that love, that unentangled love, that whole love? What steps can we start to take?
Well, I believe that we have what is called deflective awareness and reflective awareness. And this has been discussed for centuries. Deflective awareness means that I'm too proud or too humble to admit what I see in others inside me. And I think, well, you know, I would never do that, or I don't do that. And reflective awareness is where the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same. That what I see in others, I see inside me. And I'm a firm believer. I went through 4,628 traits in the Oxford Dictionary and looked at where I had every one of those traits: the nice, the mean, the kind, the cruel, the passive, the active, you know, every trait. Nothing's missing in us. We have every trait. So going and asking, whenever we see somebody that we admire, go and ask, what specific trait do they display? Where and when do I display that to the same degree as I see in them? Because I'm not going to see it in them unless I have it in me, but I'm too humble to admit it. And the trait that I despise in somebody, where do I have that one? I'm too proud to admit it right now, but I have it, or I wouldn't be able to see it in them and be judging it. But owning the traits around it. Schopenhauer says that we become our true self to the degree that we make everyone else and everything else ourselves. By going in there and asking, where do I display and demonstrate everything that I see in the people around me that I judge? If you can own that, and if you admire it, find the downsides, and if you despise it, find the upsides and level it, and have equanimity within yourself and authenticity and equity between others, you wake up and own the masculine and feminine within yourself and wake up the androgynous mastery. Nothing's missing in you. I'm a hero and villain. I'm saint, I'm sinner, I'm virtue, I'm vice, I'm all the above. And to try to get rid of some part of yourself, to be one-sided, is futile. It's a moral hypocrisy. So I'm a firm believer in owning all of your nature and realizing you're going to be, if somebody supports your values, you're going to be very, you know, soft as a pussycat. If somebody challenges you, you're going to be mean as a tiger. I'm a pussycat and a tiger. I'm kind and cruel. I'm nice, I'm mean. I'm positive and negative. I don't need to get rid of myself or half of myself to love myself. True love is the embracing of both sides of your nature within you and the nature and the people you care about. If you go up to somebody that you are in partnership with and you say to them, you're always nice, never mean, their BS meter would go off. They go, no, that's not true. If you said they're always mean, they're never nice, BS meter would go off. But if I said that sometimes you're nice, sometimes you're mean, they would go, yep, that's true. Well, why not love people objectively, according to all sides of them, and own all those inside yourself, and have reflective awareness, and open your heart and realize that it all is necessary in your evolution, and you wouldn't want to be without it. There's going to be a time and a place for everything under the sun, as Ecclesiastes says. And now you have the divine love that's there, and you integrate the masculine and feminine, the traits that have been falsely attributed to male and females through the ages, and you'll see that you're all the above. I have a feminine side, I've got a masculine side. That's part of life.
I'm really interested then about how we apply this to, so like if someone is watching this and they're saying, yeah, but there's a patriarchal system out there, that is not honoring me, then so how would we take this that you've just said to apply it to that principle?
Well, you can be a victim of history and blame people on the outside. You can be a master of destiny and take command of your life. My former girlfriend that had all that nuclear power plant and everything else, she's never felt that way. She has no problem, empowering herself and building her business and building her finances and building her social network. She's known around the world. She has empowered all those areas. She doesn't have that perception. If you're disempowered in any of those areas, you're going to tend to be conspiratory and blame things on the outside. But if you go and empower your life, I don't find any male or female, whatever that is, or anybody in the spectrum has to be feeling like a victim if they go empower their lives. So I don't find it productive to sit there and blame things of the past. I'm interested in going empowering yourself in the now. If you empower yourself in the now, the past is the past misperception. So I don't find that to be productive. I find going in there and asking, how is whatever's happening in my life right now helping me fulfill what I'm up to? If you can take whatever happens in your life and ask how specifically is whatever's happening, how is it help me fulfilling my mission, what my inspired calling is, what my highest value is, what's most meaningful and fulfilling to me. Everything's on the way, not in the way. And then you don't have there's no victim out there. So yes, there may have been things that went on there, but if you stop and ask, how does it serve and how does it benefit and how do I use it? You can transform it and not wallow in it, and you can get on with it. And I'm a firm believer in doing that, because it's easy to blame something, but the karmic world of the Buddhists were all about causality, and causality was always about giving credit and blame and moral hypocrisies. And you have to transcend that, get on the dharmic path and realize that everything is on the way, not in the way. There's nothing out there to blame on the outside. There's nothing to look on the outside for a solution. People that blame the little demon or devil out there are looking for the savior out there. But the reality is it's all inside you. There's nothing out there you have to avoid and seek. There's no demon and little angel out there. That's all a projection of your own imagination, as the Bardolph et al. Said. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which I did a summary of one time, I wrote a big book on it. It said at the moment of your passing, you'll be confronted by the light of the void, and you'll be confronted by peaceful and wrathful deities. But fear not, they're projections of your own self. It's your own mind out there. It's your anthropomorphic projections onto nature and onto things that support and challenge your values. And those things, we have control over our perceptions, decisions, and actions in life. It's not what happens to it. It's our perception, decisions, and actions to it. So take command of your perceptions, balance them back out, re-empower your life, wake up your own God and goddess within you, and don't let the world on the outside or any stories on the outside interfere with you contributing your immortal message on the planet, your mission on the planet. That's the way I look at it. I don't find it's very productive to go and blame something outside when I can be doing something on the inside. I have control over my perception, decisions, actions. I don't have control out there. I have control here. So take command of what you can control and get on with your life.
I really love this. This is so empowering. And that's what I feel like. Those that feel that something has been on the outside, then that is birthing something inside of them. That is birthing a purpose to go and change it.
Well, whenever you're getting challenged on the outside, it forces you to go inside and find out what your strength is. If people support you, think about this. If somebody supported you and took care of you and made it easy on you, everything else, you become juvenilely dependent, you wouldn't grow. And if you're always supported, you're not really going to do much growth. If you're challenged, you become precociously independent, more independent. And so the challenging from society or whatever forces people to empower themselves. So these are oscillations, there may have been a time when the female dominated and the male felt suppressed, So the males probably said, the hell with that. We're gonna come back on the other side. And it's like a husband and wife going tit for tat around the house all day long. Welcome to life. But the timetables may be lasting longer periods of time on a collective scale. But these are all just disempowered perceptions, more so than actions. We got to give ourselves permission to not be wallowing in the past. Get present, empower yourself right now, and do something with your life. That's my advice. Get on with it.
Thank you.
We can always blame things on the outside. Epictetus, the Greek philosopher Epictetus said, at first, when you're on your journey of personal development, you start out blaming others, right? And other things, outside things. Then you start blaming yourself. And then you finally mature, you find that there's nothing to blame. There was a hidden order to it. You know, the concept of entropy means disorder, which means missing information, according to Claude Shannon. And so what happens is when we ask the right questions, become conscious of the unconscious and integrate, as Jung says, the conscious and unconscious, and become fully conscious, we realize there was nothing to blame. There's nothing out of order. There's a hidden order there. We have to go digging in our awareness to go find the divine and hidden order that's present that we're overlooking. And it's our human frail misperceptions and conscious and unconscious splits and judgments and subjective biases. And, you know, this is what stops us from realizing the divine nature inside us. And it's the integration of male and female. If the females are trying to get rid of the males and only get the females, they're going to have the same issue. And then it's going to go the other direction. So integrate the two, appreciate the two. That's it. Because if you try to get rid of the male on the outside, it'll come in the inside of you.
Yeah.
You'll end up, if you try to get rid of the female outside, it'll come inside you. The patriarchs had to learn a lesson that they became the females inside them as they're trying to suppress the females on the outside. It doesn't work. Integrate the two, honor the two, appreciate all the different factions, and empower all areas of your life. Then you don't worry about the past, or you don't worry about the government or this doing suppression. I don't find that productive.
Thank you, John. I find that so empowering. So if people want to take the next step with you, what would you recommend to them? And whilst you're answering that, I'm going to invite people to come and ask questions in the group as you're answering that.
Yeah. If they want to know about me, all they have to do is go to my website, drdemartini.com. And there's a lot on there. You could spend the rest. You would have to believe in Buddhist reincarnations or the panpsychic, thing of Plato or something like that, because it's going to take you multiple lives just to go through my website. There's so much on there. But,
that's so true. I've been on one of John's courses. It's 10 days long, 14 hours a day, and he would do more if he could, but we make him, let's go to bed.
Yeah, I've been teaching this is my 50th year of teaching. I've been teaching a long time. And I love it. I love researching, writing, traveling, and teaching. That's what I do. I'm traveling on my ship and I'm researching and writing and teaching all day. And I think that my website says most of it. There's podcasts. There's Dr. Demartini's podcast show. There's YouTube videos. There's so much on there. There's thousands of articles. I mean, I've done 10,000 radio, television, newspaper, magazine, podcast articles, and interviews. So you can stay on there for the rest of your life and not do them all. So if you want a nice education, there's plenty of stuff on there. And there's also, if you get overwhelmed by me, which sometimes people go, whoa, it's like drinking from a fire hydrant. That's fine too. You can probably join a 12-step program, Survivors of Demartini, somewhere if you want to do that, be victim of that, But I'm a firm believer. I'm a firm believer that, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and vice versa. And if the website, drdemartini.com, and there's also a value determination process, a very excellent little exercise on there. It's free, it's private, and it's worth doing, and it's worth learning, because your values dictate your destiny, and your values are filtering how you see reality. And if your values are being supported or challenged, you're going to react and you're going to label things. If you see both of them simultaneously, you're going to grow. Maximum growth and development occurs at the border of all pairs of opposites. So you got to embrace both of them and look for them. If you don't see it, the ancient Greeks said there was the law of similars and law of differences. When you're infatuated with somebody, you see more similarities. Oh my God, we have the same number of eyes, same number of ribs, same number of teeth. We must be soulmates. And then we have the law of differences. When you resent somebody, one is basically, a sweetheart, and the other one is a-hole, if you will. And so these are support and challenge extremes and similars and differences. And when you put similars and differences together, you have maximum growth. You don't want somebody that's exactly the same. There's an old proverb that, relationships attract, similars attract, and yet opposites attract, because you're searching for that which is similar, but you attract that which is opposite to make you grow. You don't grow with the similarities, you grow with that. If any two people are exactly the same, one's not necessary. So you need both these two sides. You need this androgynous integration. And that's why our job is to get past our conscious and unconscious biases and finally become fully conscious. That's our journey.
Thank you, John. And for anyone who wants to dive deeper into exploring these pairs of opposites in themselves, I really recommend John's breakthrough experience, because that is going to open up your eyes to so much and to this divine nature that he's been talking about. It's a really first step, if we could say, in finding this out for yourself instead of just hearing about it. When you see it and feel it for yourself, it changes your whole reality, and you can start laughing at the world a lot more.
Yeah, well, you know, the cosmic couple are the people who have a cosmic view. Richard M. Buch in 1901, in his book called Cosmic Conscious, talked about cosmic consciousness, where they're fully aware of their androgynous nature. So I'm a firm believer that everybody has it. Nothing's missing in you. You know, if you start to say that in your life, there's nothing missing in me. It's in a form that I have yet to find. Go dig deeper. Look beyond the superficial glance and go deep probing into the mysteries of your own being. Introspect until you discover that you're not missing anything. And the moment you see that nothing's missing in you, you stop worrying about what's been missing in society or in history. You get on with doing something now that's profound, that makes a difference, that changes history. I'm not interested in being run by history. I'm interested in making history.
Oh, thank you so much, John. Right, I'm just going to have a look and see if there's any questions. So if people have questions, please put it in the comments section. I'm just having a look. We've got about 5 more minutes for some questions. So someone's asked, Whitney, so she has a question about nothing is missing. Any suggestion on asking good quality questions about income goals if they're not manifested yet?
Oh boy, here we go. Everybody has a set of priorities, a set of values in life, and that hierarchy of values dictates their financial destiny. Every dollar you spend or get is spent according to your values. If you don't have a value on buying assets and you keep buying consumables that depreciate in value, you will never have your money working for you. You'll be working for it. Instead of being a master of money, you'll be a slave to it. So it's not how much money you make, it's how you manage what you make, and your hierarchy of values dictates how you manage it. So if you're not really truly buying assets that actually start to passively earn income for you, and you keep buying things and hoping to get ahead, you'll find that that's not how it works. It requires that you buy assets. And so that means you have to pass up immediate gratification for consumables and depreciables, living vicariously through other people's overpriced brands, and start building a brand of your own, and start valuing yourself and valuing the wealth potential, and let your money start working for you. I started to change that at age 27. I was living prosperously and always hoping that somehow it was going to happen. And no matter what I did, it just seemed to be always breaking even every month. And then I started to pay myself first, and I started to invest and buy assets, and I became financially independent, many-fold over today, and get to sail around on the biggest yacht in the world. So in the process of doing that, it's basically, you have to honor the idea of the spiritual material. Spirit without matter is expressionless. Matter without spirit is motionless. If you have equanimity and authenticity within yourself and live from an inspired, objective state, you have the mastery over business and sustainable, fair transactions, which earn the greatest money. So I always say that if you're poor, it's because you're not serving humanity. You're not caring about humanity enough to meet the needs of humanity. The people who are extremely wealthy are meeting vast needs in society. Ask yourself, what is it that's really needed out there? And then look at which one of those inspire you to want to fulfill those, and then be more effective and efficient at fulfilling those than anybody else. And fortunes are yours. And then save and invest your money. But until you save and invest the money and value money, when you manage money wisely, you get more money to manage. But if you manage money poorly, money keeps being taken from you. Entropy takes over anything that's not organized wisely. You have to value wealth building if you want to have order to it.
Thank you, John. And she's just said, wow, thank you. Okay, if there's any other questions, pop them in the comment box. We literally have 1 more minute left, so you have 1 more minute. I will come and check other questions later on, and we'll see if we can get them answered. Thank you so much, John, for taking time. I know you're really, really busy, and it was difficult to get this in the diary, so I really, really appreciate you coming on and talking to us today.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity to have a great discussion on the God and Goddess and the divine nature. I think that if we're actually in a state of grace, I don't think we can differentiate masculine and feminine in that moment. A deep meditative satori state, I don't know if we can even determine what our own so-called gender means. I think our real nature transcends those things. So thank you for the opportunity. Whoever's out there, thank you for enduring me. Love you all. And thank you for what you're doing, Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you. Speak to you all soon. Bye.